The Nightly Business Report.
Good evening. Tonight, tourists from Sri Lanka to get visa-free entry to Thailand under a program approved by the country's cabinet. Embassy of Republic of Iraq in Colombo invites Sri Lankan investors to establish business links in the Middle Eastern country. The Colombo Stock Exchange breaks its negative streak, closing today's trading session with notable gains after a prolonged downturn. And Aitken Spence Plantations announces its intention to delist its ordinary shares from the official list of the Colombo Stock Exchange.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. A media report stated that tourists from Sri Lanka would get visa-free entry to Thailand from the 1st of June under a program approved by the country's cabinet to boost the sector.
Sri Lankans are among 36 countries added to a list of 57 countries that would get 60-day stays under the scheme. The new countries eligible for Destination Thailand visa include Albania, Cambodia, China, India, Jamaica, Kazakhstan, Laos, Mexico, Morocco, Panama, Romania and Uzbekistan. Thailand's government spokesman quoted in a news report that visitors who want to work and visit tourist destinations will be able to get 5-year visas valid for 180 days, extendable for another 180 days. The visa will allow foreign students of higher education to stay for 1 year after graduation and work, instead of having to leave the country immediately after finishing their course. The spokesman added that they can find work during the extended period, especially in fields that we need. Visitors over 50 years who want long-stay visas currently need to have health insurance coverage worth 3 million baht. This has now been reduced to 440,000 baht. The cabinet also approved the expansion of e-visa application services at Thai consulates and embassies from 47 to 94 locations commencing in September.
A 6-member delegation from Singapore's Immigration and Checkpoints Authority is currently in Sri Lanka to conduct a comprehensive study of airport and immigration department operating systems.
The Minister of Public Security said in a statement, the purpose of the visit is to provide cooperation to improve Sri Lanka's immigration system by achieving the same standards as Singapore and integrating advanced technology. This will greatly contribute to Sri Lanka's efforts to modernize and improve all procedures related to immigration, visa issuance and citizenship. The team, who are here after Minister Derana requested and Singapore Minister for Law K. Shanmugam's help, will provide a detailed report on recommendations to bring the existing system on par with that of Singapore. Sri Lanka recently controversially outsourced its visa handling function to VFS Global, which requires the payment of processing and convenience charges of $26, even though the government does not collect any fees. Maldivian authorities have reminded Sri Lanka of the long-standing bilateral agreement under which their citizens could travel freely between the two neighbours without any charges or bureaucratic barriers. Singapore is another country which could take actions against Sri Lanka if the bilateral deal is found to be violated, according to a source said. There are only a handful of countries to which Sri Lanka passport holders can travel without any visa restrictions.
Sri Lanka's central bank has entered into a cooperation agreement with the International Finance Corporation and the World Bank Group to obtain technical and financial assistance to focus on green finance.
The central bank said this will help to upgrade its roadmap for sustainable finance, green finance taxonomy, and also to expand the focus on the National Financial Inclusion Strategy Phase 2 by including inclusive green finance with an emphasis on export-oriented SMEs. The program is partially financed by the European Union's Accelerating Climate, Smart and Inclusive Infrastructure in South Asia program, which supports sustainable private sector development. The central bank will benefit from the experience and knowledge of other members, while receiving technical support in green finance from IFC, a global leader in environmental and social standards. The IFC commented that Sri Lanka is unique, with 18 banks already adopting 11 voluntary principles under the leadership of the Sri Lankan Banks Association. The IFC-supported Sustainable Banking Network is working with associations and regulators to level the playing field for banks and encourage green investment.
In a strategic move to uplift foreign investment in the real estate sector, the Sri Lankan Department of Immigration and Immigration has reintroduced the Investor Visa program.
This revamped initiative, aimed specifically at non-Sri Lankans interested in purchasing condominium units, is set to go live online on the 1st of June 2024. The system will be fully operational next week, ensuring that visa applications can be processed entirely online, thereby simplifying the process for prospective investors. One of the key highlights of the new processes is that foreigners residing in Sri Lanka will no longer need to leave the country to apply an investor visa. This significant change is expected to encourage more investors to contribute to Sri Lanka's economic growth and provide a much-needed boost to construction and property development industry.
The charge d'affaires of the Embassy of Republic of Iraq in Colombo, Mohammed Obeid Jabur Sahai Al-Masoudi, has invited Sri Lankan investors to establish business links in the Middle East country.
The head of the embassy encourages Sri Lankan investors to establish business links in Baghdad and Kurdistan, the Trade Minister said in a statement. Trade Minister Nalin Fernando met Al-Masoudi to discuss conducting the 9th session of Iraq-Sri Lanka for Economic and Technical Cooperation in Sri Lanka in November. The forum offers a platform to develop bilateral relations between both countries. Establishing direct shipping facilities which would bolster Sri Lanka's trade to Europe and the Middle East, improving air connectivity and bilateral tourism ventures between the two countries were discussed at the meeting. The re-establishment of a Sri Lankan embassy in Iraq was also discussed to solve visa and tax issues between the two countries. Iraq is one of the main buyers of Sri Lanka's tea, and nearly 150,000 migrant Sri Lankans work in Iraq.
Time for a short commercial break now. Some mixed updates from the stock exchange coming right after this. Welcome back. After continued days of record lows, the Colombo stock market was able to recover itself from the negative trajectory, showcasing gains at the end of today's trading. After deeply ending in lows yesterday, the all-share price index and the S&P SL 20 index marked gains, reviving itself from the fallen lows. Well, to get a breakdown on this positive day at the market, let's connect Nishara Pereira joining us from Capital Alliance Securities.
The Colombo Stock Exchange recovered from yesterday's drop, with the ASPI up 68 points, regaining by 0.56% to end at 12,170. Turnover for the day was a moderate 1.3 billion rupees, with the SL20 index also up at 47 points at 3,595. Notable institutional engagement was observed in blue-chip counters, with crossings recorded in Sampat Bank, Milstar Corp and John Keel's Holdings. In terms of positive contribution to the ASPI, banking counters stood out, with Commercial Bank, Sampat Bank, Richard Pierce, Nations Development Bank and HNB Non-Voting being the top contributors. The top 5 gainers for the day were Blue Diamonds, Ceylon Printers, SMB Leasing, Lanka Ventures and Browns Beach. Foreign activity saw buying worth 173 million rupees, while sales amounted to 278 million rupees.
Commercial Bank, the largest private banks by assets, announced yesterday a capital call from shareholders of 22 billion rupees, offering voting shares at 85 rupees and non-voting at 69 rupees. Market participants reported that there was a sharp decline in the market from the bell, mainly due to the Commercial Bank, and there was a significant selling pressure on the bank shares, which trickled to other banking stocks as well. But to get a deep understanding of these actions and their reasoning, let's connect Ranjan Ranatunga from First Capital Holdings.
In a disclosure made to CSC, Commercial Bank of Ceylon yesterday announced a right issue of 1 share for every 5 shares held for both non-voting and voting shares of the Commercial Bank PLC share. With that, the company expects to raise 252 million shares of voting shares, while another 15.8 million shares will be raised from the non-voting shares. With this, the company plans to raise a total of 22.5 billion which should be utilized to capitalize the tier 1 as well as the tier 2 capital ratio of the Commercial Bank and use that for future expansion purposes of the lending book. With this, we believe the capital adequacy ratio, which was almost at the borderline level for Commercial Bank at 11.145% by the March end, will increase to close to 12% with the infusion of new capital through the right issue. With this, we believe with the introduction of the right issue, we expect the net asset value to come down from 165 to 152 for 2024, while the 2025 book value will come down from 173 to 159 levels. With that, our valuations will also fall, where we expect the target price for commercial bank to be at around 160 rupees, downward revised from 170 rupees, while for 2025, our target price has been revised down to 180 from 200. Thank you.
Gold prices fell in Asian trade today, weighed chiefly by strength in the dollar and the US Treasury yields as traders remain on the edge before key economic readings that are likely to factor into the interest rates. Spot gold fell 0.2% to $2,332.98 an ounce, while gold futures fell 0.4% to $2,331.60 an ounce, just ahead of their expiry on the 1st of June. The greenback rose to an over 2-week high as fears of high for longer US interest rates kept traders largely biased towards the greenback. Benchmark US Treasury yields also rose this week. This trend drove some flows out of gold, driving the yellow metal further away from record highs hit last week. The yellow metal also lost most of its gains made this week. Well, oil prices held steady today as optimism over larger than expected decline in the US inventories was offset by caution ahead of key economic data that could influence interest rate decisions. Brent oil futures for July delivery held steady at $83.61 per barrel, while West Texas Intermediate crude futures rose slightly to $79.29 per barrel. The strength of the US dollar also put pressure on crude prices as traders remain largely biased towards the greenback pending further cues on interest rates and inflation. The Sri Lankan rupee was seen depreciating today against the US dollar after remaining steady yesterday. Accordingly, the buying rate of the US dollar is 296 rupees and 87 cents, while the selling rate is 306 rupees and 48 cents. Well, let's take a look at how the rupee exchange rates behave against the other global currencies. Let's go for a short commercial break now. This is the Nightly Business Report. Welcome back to the Nightly Business Report. Aitken Spence Plantation Management PLC has announced its intention to delist its ordinary shares from the official list of the Colombo Stock Exchange. This decision was made during a board meeting held yesterday and is dependent on the obtaining required approvals from shareholders and regulators.
The company has arranged for its three largest shareholders, Aitken Spence PLC, MJF Holdings Private Limited and Mr. D.A. De Silva Vikramanayaka to acquire shares from minority shareholders wishing to divest at a price of 240 rupees per share. This exit offer aims to facilitate the proposed delisting. The major shareholders have agreed to purchase shares from minority shareholders proportionately, maintaining their current shareholding percentages post-delisting. This agreement ensures that the distribution of shares remains balanced among the major shareholders according to their existing ownership stakes. To inform shareholders of the rationale behind delisting and to seek their approval, the company will soon dispatch a circular and a notice for an extraordinary general meeting. This EGM will be convened to discuss and vote on the proposed delisting.
The Embassy of Sri Lanka in Riyadh organised Sri Lanka's participation at Riyadh Travel Fair 2024 in collaboration with the Sri Lankan Tourism Board.
The fair was held at the Riyadh International Convention and Exhibition Centre from the 27th of May to the 29th of May in 2024. This year's fair was held after a gap of 5 years. The objective of the travel fair is to facilitate networking among tour and travel operators. 18 Sri Lankan tourism destination management companies, Sri Lankan Airlines and the Sri Lankan Tourism Promotion Bureau attended the event. Ambassador designated of Sri Lanka to Saudi Arabia, Omar Lebbe Amir Rajwad, inaugurated the Sri Lankan pavilion of the destination management companies. In his address, Ambassador Amir Rajwat highlighted that the historical context of tourism in Sri Lanka and Saudi Arabia and stressed the importance of providing updated information in Arabic about Sri Lanka as a tourist destination. The event was attended by 250 exhibitors from more than 25 countries.
Marking its 11th year, the much-anticipated annual CFA Society Sri Lanka Capital Market Awards is scheduled to be held on the 18th of June 2024 at the Oak Room at Cinnamon Grand, Colombo.
The dates and the specifications were announced yesterday at a media briefing. A signature event in the CFA Society Sri Lanka calendar since its inception in 2012, CFA Society Sri Lanka Capital Market Awards is among the more sought-after accolades that recognizes and rewards excellence in the local capital markets. Held under the theme of the power of public-private partnerships, this year's event will focus on the current status of public-private partnerships in Sri Lanka and their future potential. The discussion on the theme will also draw from the country's past experiences in handling PPPs and the role of the private sector, as well as learnings from a regional perspective. The awards will be presented under the categories of Best Equity Research Team, Best Equity Research Report, Best Sector Report, Best Investor Relations Team, Best Unit Trust Team, as well as the Best ESG Reporting Award, with awards for gold, silver and bronze in each category respectively.
Ceylon Bank PLC, in collaboration with the Asian Development Bank and the Government of Sri Lanka, will disburse working capital and long-term loans for the ADB aimed at bolstering the small and medium enterprise sector in the country. In an effort to stimulate economic growth and support local businesses, Ceylon Bank will offer financial assistance and SMEs engaged in various industries including agriculture, fisheries, ornamental fisheries, aquaculture, livestock, animal husbandry, poultry, tourism and export-oriented businesses. Ceylon Bank has been a consistent partner in regard to the ADB funding in Sri Lanka. Through ADB's credit lines, the bank has disbursed loans to the SME sector and tea smallholders in the past. Let's take a short commercial break now. Global updates coming right away. Welcome back to the Nightly Business Report. Most Asian stocks fell today amid persistent fears of sticky inflation inviting high interest rates, with the technology sector seeing the steepest declines as investors also locked in recent profits. Tech-heavy indexes were the worst performers in Asian trade, with Japan's Nikkei 225 and Hong Kong's Hang Seng and South Korea's Kospi down between 1% and 1.5%. An initial rally in the sector, driven by hype over artificial intelligence, now appear to be winding down, while decreased risk appetite also saw investors look in recent gains in the sector. Chinese stocks fell relatively less than regional peers, with the Shanghai Shenzhen CSI 300 and the Shanghai Composite Index losing about 0.2% each. Australia's ASX 200 slid 0.6%, extending losses after an hotter than expected inflation reading on Wednesday. US stocks fell amid further gains in treasury yields and concern over the timing and a scale of possible interest rate cuts from the Federal Reserve.
U.S. stocks fell on Wednesday amid further gains in Treasury yields and concern over the timing and scale of possible interest rate cuts from the Federal Reserve. The Dow dropped to its lowest level in nearly a month and closed down more than 1%. The S&P 500 shed nearly 0.75%, and the Nasdaq lost almost 0.6%. The yield on the benchmark 10-year U.S. Treasury note hit 4-week highs at 4.6%, extending Tuesday's gains after weak debt auctions. Conflicting expectations on the size and timing of potential interest rate cuts have kept the market on edge since the start of this year. In company news, shares of Salesforce, which closed up more than 0.5%, plummeted roughly 17% in after-hours trading after the business software company forecast second-quarter revenue below Wall Street expectations as customers lower spending on its cloud and enterprise business products. Shares of Marathon Oil gained almost 8.5% after ConocoPhillips said it would buy the company in an all-stock deal for a little over its $15 billion market value. Conoco slipped more than 3%. Airline stocks fell, led by American Airlines, down 13.5% after the company cut its second quarter profit forecast. And Abercrombie & Fitch shot up more than 24% after the retailer raised its annual sales growth forecast.
Well, that is it from us at the Nightly Business Report. Tune in again tomorrow at the same time for more key updates. I'm Vinod Varnasurya. Have a good night.